It's Tuesday, February 5th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, reports of swattings and scams, cockroaches and silverfish, and bills and committee assignments. First up, municipal and community news and notes. A local legislator has filed a bill that would allow police dogs injured in the line of duty to be treated and transported by emergency personnel. An act providing for the care and transportation of police dogs injured in the line of duty, also known as Nero's Bill, was filed by 2nd Barnstable State Representative Will Crocker in response to the tragic shooting last April, which killed Yarmouth Police Sergeant Sean Gannon and wounded his canine partner, Nero. Due to current law, Nero was unable to receive treatment or be transported by ambulance and had to wait for veterinary care. Crocker filed the legislation at the request of first responders who felt helpless in the situation. Representative Will Crocker joins us in studio to bring us up to date on the bill filings and his committee assignments. It's been just about a month that sessions have been back on Beacon Hill. With me today, Representative Will Crocker. Will, you got a full month up there already.
Yeah, we've just finished up some of our preliminary work in the House. We've gotten through our annual, every 2 years meeting to decide what rules we're going to work under, and the bills have, we've finished filing the bills. Last week was the last week for other members of the legislature to sign on as co-sponsors. Okay. So, you know, we're beginning to get up to speed.
Okay. So talk a little bit about maybe just an educational moment here of you create a bill and then you need co-sponsors for it. How does that work?
Once you create a bill, it goes into the system, it's given a title, it's given a name, and we ask the other members of the legislature, both the House and the Senate, to sign on as co-sponsors. That basically says you agree with what the bill is trying to do, and that you would support it, and that you know, hopefully we could get them, when it finally gets in front of a committee, to come down and testify in support of the bill.
Excellent. I did not know that. The second thing is the committee assignments. You've retained one, you're ranking for that, and you've got a couple of others you're on now. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is my second term on the Committee for Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. I'm now the ranking minority member on that, which gives me a little more influence in what goes on with regard to the committees. So I'm very happy to be continuing to be on that, because the opioid addiction problem is still obviously a very big problem here in the 2nd Barnstable District. I'm on 2 other new committees now, which are the Housing Committee and the Committee on Labor and Workforce Development. Obviously, again, 2 committees that have a huge impact here in Barnstable and Yarmouth.
Right. And what is some of the work that those committees do?
Well, the Housing Committee looks at specific areas where the Commonwealth can help out cities and towns with regard to housing, maybe development, maybe changing some state statutes that can make housing, you know, that's going to be my focus, is to be able to look at changing some of the restrictions, maybe some of the state laws with regard to zoning, so that we can make affordable, low-cost workforce housing, you know, something that's easier to do.
Right. And then you've also filed your first bill?
Well,
second bill, right?
Well, no, this time around I filed 9 bills,
right.
But the one of the bills that's getting a lot of attention is it's called House Docket 1332, which again that'll change once it gets into a committee, but we call it Nero's Bill. Now, Nero was Sergeant Gannon's police canine officer dog. We all know what happened with Sergeant Gannon. But one of the things that was kind of an offshoot of this whole thing was that Nero was injured in the line of duty when that incident happened. But by law, the EMTs who were there are not allowed by law to be able to stabilize the animal and or treat the animal. So Nero stayed in the house for a number of hours until someone who was trained to be able to remove him was there to be able to remove him. But even so, the EMTs were not allowed to be able to stabilize him and treat him. Nero's bill will allow EMTs, once they are trained as far as the veterinary statutes are concerned, they will be able to stabilize him, treat him, and transport him to the nearest emergency vet. So, that we like to look at it this way: a police officer who is injured in the line of duty gets the best medical treatment. The canine officer, which the police departments consider a member of their force, should also get that kind of treatment as well. Should be able to be stabilized and transported by EMS.
Right. And how did this actually come about? This was it folks from COM Fire Department that brought this to your attention?
Folks from COM and also Chief Frederickson and the Yarmouth Police Department approached me and Representative Whalen with saying, this would have been nice if we could do this. I mean, a good thing out of this tragedy would be if we could get this legislation changed, because most of the states in this country do not allow it. There's only 5 or 6 states that allow it right now. We want to make Massachusetts either 6 or 7.
Right, and by doing that, the proper care really does help the animal survival rate as well, is if they can treat on site as quickly as possible.
You'll talk to any veterinarians, and one of the gentlemen who was a tremendous help and basically kind of put the legislation together for me is Highness Veterinarian Kevin Smith, and he will tell you that just like humans, if you can treat a police canine officer within that golden hour, the odds of that canine being able to survive their wound is greatly increased. Just like you or me, if you can get treated for any serious injury within that hour, your odds are much better.
Right. Excellent. Any other topics you want to discuss today?
Well, we're working on a few more bills, and we're just waiting for them to get into committees, and then we start the whole thing all over again, trying to get those bills passed into law.
Fantastic. Thanks for stopping in today.
Thank you.
Chief Sonneman joins us today to talk about a recent swatting event and the grandparent scam. Swatting and scams today are the topics with the Chief of Police here in the town of Barnstable. Welcome, Chief Sonneman.
Should have brought my fly swatter.
Should have brought your fly swatter, exactly.
Scamming the flies.
Swatting. I saw this press release come in this past week, and swatting. Swatting, it closed down Main Street.
Yep.
What is
for
that?
a brief period of time. Swatting is something it's referred to trying to get a SWAT team to respond, and it's kind of gone around the country for the last couple of years. It's where someone calls, they consider it a prank, but they call the police department or 911 or something like that and create or report a serious incident like a murder or a hostage situation in the attempt to get the police to respond to that location with a SWAT team, or if they don't have one, just the police to respond and break into the house, get into the house and do something. Oftentimes around the country, if you take a look on the internet and whatnot, look at it, they'll have locations where occupied homes, the homeowner's unaware of it, and someone calls up, says, like in our case, the person called up and said they killed somebody and they were at a location on Main Street and said, if anyone shows up, I'm going to shoot whoever shows up. So obviously, you got to go check it out. You can't just not check it out, but in some places they report it serious enough and they go with a SWAT team or they go with resources, and so they knock on the door and nobody answers the door because people are sleeping, and they bust in the door and there you are in your PJs, and there comes a SWAT team. So it's kind of tough because you want people to call 911 or you want people to call to report an emergency, and you got to kind of trust what people are telling you, but you also have to look at it and weigh and measure it, and is this sound reasonable? And in our instance, our dispatch staff and the police staff that were working and the supervisors, it just didn't sound right. You can check locations. We didn't have any real history there. There's been like nothing going on. It was kind of out of the blue. So they were kind of looking at it askance right away and kind of had a feeling that this was not what it seemed to be. But you still got to check it out. Right.
So you did have to close down Main Street.
Well, if it's true and somebody's there with a gun, you don't want anybody to get shot.
Sure.
Because you don't want to say, this is nothing, and then it ends up being something. So
right.
You do still have to take adequate steps, and diverting traffic for a little bit isn't gonna, nobody gets hurt, and we can take care of that until you can check it out, and you use your resources and try and track it down, and then you got to go in and you got to check it out eventually to make sure that there actually isn't something going on.
Right. So in the investigative part of this, is there a way to track those phone calls, and is there penalties for doing stuff like this?
There are penalties, and sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I mean, you can, I don't want to give away the store, but
Right.
there's also, you can look up on the internet, spoofing. People spoof numbers or use, burner phones or different things, and a lot of this has come up through, like, gamers will do it to their other gamers that are playing online, and they're live streaming their games and want to watch the police break in there while on somebody. So it's why they consider it a prank. I mean, because people get hurt. You can look on the internet again, look on the internet, and you see people have gotten hurt or the cops have responded, and you gotta keep your eyes open and be awake, and our people were, and realized it was false, and use some investigative techniques to determine that no, this isn't really what's going on. But yeah, you got to run an investigation. You try and trace numbers. You try and find out what's going on. And in some cases you can, some cases you can't. In some cases it's we have them happen. They weren't really swatting, but sometimes people call up and make false reports of crimes. There are penalties for that, and we do catch people doing that from time to time. But in this day and age, I mean, whoever did it might not even be in the state.
Right.
So.
Crazy stuff out there. And
It
even crazier is targeting my grandma.
Your
right?
grandma.
Or your grandma, right?
My grandma, yes. Well, grandparents scheme.
$20,000 over the last couple weeks.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But, people should be aware of this. It may sound kind of simple, but, they prey on the vulnerable population, the trusting population, grandparents. Obviously, if they call your parents can say, well, they can rot in jail. I'm not coming to get them. Right. I ain't coming to get them. So they know they're not calling anybody's parents, because
Right.
the parents are going to be harsh. But, they call a grandparent, and it's fairly simple. They call up and basically start out a conversation like, oh, you know who this is? You recognize my voice? And right away, someone will, oh, is this so-and-so? And then they seize on that and say, yeah, this is Tim, and I'm in jail, I need your help, or I'm stuck wherever, I need money. And they try and get the person, either send them money or gift cards. And if you've noticed, over the holiday season, if you went and bought gift cards or like a CVS or somewhere else, if you buy over a certain amount, they get your ID to make sure that there's not some sort of scam, or if there's some sort of crime going on in connection with that. So they do target people, they do try and get them to get gift cards, send money and other things like that. But if someone is calling from your family purporting that they're in trouble, try and get a hold of that family member by another means. Call them on their cell phone, get a hold of friends, whatever it might be. Double check it just to make sure you're not getting a scam, because it happened, like you said, in Wareham recently, happened in Brewster, and how many times are people calling? People trust. People want to trust, they want to help out their family member. They wouldn't think a family member would call and scam them, and people take advantage of that.
Right. And what we've noticed too with some of our older population is they get embarrassed and they don't report it.
They don't report it because, you're right, they're embarrassed. Oh, how did I fall for this? Or, sometimes if people have means, they don't recognize it. They don't recognize that they fell for it, so they just don't know sometimes.
And some of the information out there on social media too seems to contribute to this, where there's profiles out there of their grandkids that has a lot of information, or they're posting a lot of information about their family members.
Be careful what you post online, or check if you're on social media, check your account settings and things like that. What are you actually revealing to the public? What information are you actually putting out there? What's your online footprint? And are you exposing yourself to some unnecessary things? People put their phone numbers on there. You said they put their names and ages and birth dates and all that other stuff on there. That this is fodder for people that are looking to prey on people. They use that.
Right. And if they do get a phone call like that, obviously they're checking with their family members first, but do they call the police after that?
Absolutely. We've had it, we had one where I got the call. Actually, there was somebody called over in Hyannis who said they got a call from Publishers Clearinghouse, said they were coming to give them a check, and they needed to be standing by and have another check in hand to cover expenses. And we put people out there to keep an eye on it. The person never showed up at the appointed time or date and time, so that fell through. But the person recognized that, hey, this is not good, and called the police. So by all means, give us a call. If you're even the slightest bit suspicious, give us a call, let us know. Some of these things we can at least try and look into, and other times, we can be there, we can help try and work out, we intercept the person if possible. But like, sometimes these cases are, people not even in this country are making these calls, and tracking them down can be difficult because of just the way the internet and these phony phone lines and spoofing scams work, spoofing things work.
Right.
They're meant to disguise people, and these people do know what they're doing, and they just move on to the next person. If it's going to be the slightest bit difficult, they drop and they move on to the next person.
Ugh. Scams, swatting, nefarious shenanigans.
Be careful, but be
That's it.
nice.
But be nice. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
We've got the creepy crawlies queued up for you with another episode of Bug Buzz, featuring the dynamic entomologist duo of Larry Dapsis and Gabrielle Sokolsky.
Hi, I'm Larry Dapsis. I'm the entomologist with Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, and I'm here with my bug buddy.
Gabrielle Sokolsky. I'm the entomologist for Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project.
And welcome to this segment of Bug Buzz, where Gabby and I each bring a couple different creatures to your attention. Maybe you're familiar with them, maybe not. And we're going to give you a lot of fairly detailed, interesting information about how they make their living. So for today's show, Gabby, what are you bringing to this party?
Fun facts about silverfish and a little bit about firebrats, because they're very closely related. They're very similar. So let me tell you a little bit about silverfish. I'm guessing most people have seen silverfish in their attic or in their basement. They're moving boxes around. If you haven't, silverfish kind of are the shape of an ice cream cone. The top, the wide part is where the head is. You've got a couple of antennae on the head, and then they taper down, and then they've got a few Circe hairs at the other end of their body as well. Silverfish and firebrats are very similar to silverfish in their life cycle. They look a little different. They don't taper.
And they're pretty primitive, aren't they?
They are. They're very primitive. In fact, when you look at a silverfish, you're looking at the way insects actually looked approximately 400 million years ago. It's hard to even imagine that long ago on Earth there were these insects, and you're looking at them today based on fossil record. So silverfish and firebrats go through kind of the same life cycle. They tend to lay their eggs on cloth or in cracks and crevices and sort of humid places. With the silverfish, they like cooler, humid places, so they're in your attic or in your basement.
Or in your bookcase.
Or in your bookcase. And humidity is a key, so if you can keep it dry, you can keep down their populations. Firebrats are like their name. Firebrats like it warmer. They might be near your heated pipes and the insulation. Or
around your furnace.
Exactly. Furnace, stove, anything that warms up, the firebrats will be there. They both go through the same sort of life cycle. They lay those eggs. They lay between 1 and 100 eggs when they lay their eggs. And then they start to grow. So when they hatch, they look just like the adults. Except for with silverfish, they don't have scales, not as shiny maybe as the adults are. They go through 4 molts, the silverfish do, and then you start to see those scales develop on them. They're kind of interesting because they're really the only insects that I can think of that continue to molt as adults. So with most insects, like a butterfly or housefly, once they get to that adult stage, that's it, they're not going to grow anymore. But with silverfish, they can continue to feed and grow and molt many times throughout their life. They'll live 2-3 years if they have a nice habitat in your house to live in. They feed on cellulose, so paper, boxes. That's where you start to see the damage.
The glue around your book bindings.
They like the glue.
They're a problem in libraries.
They are. And when you see them, so they have mouth parts that kind of scrape. So with those scraping mouth parts, you start to see holes in the boxes or in the papers. You start to see little holes. And then the more of them there are, the more scraping they do, the more damage is done by those insects. They tend to be active at night, so you're not going to see them running around unless you go through the attic or the basement to move something, and then you see them scurry around. They tend to, during the day, to gather together in sort of safe locations and sit quietly until it gets to be night and feeding time again. So there's not a lot that you need to do about them. If you have a population that's causing damage, most people use those sticky papers. They just put them out, the insect runs on it, gets stuck, and that
mechanical
takes care
control.
of your insect problem. Some people just use tape, the back side of tape where it's sticky. They'll put that out so they'll get stuck on it. If you have a lot of damage, if you're something like a library or somewhere where you're trying to make sure that it's not a problem causing a lot of damage and you need to do some sort of chemical control, before you do anything, I would recommend you talk to Larry at the Extension Service.
Sure, we're always open for business.
There you go. So that's just a short
So that's great.
silverfish
That's
overview.
great. Well, What I'm going to talk about today is las cucarachas, ole,
Pretty exciting.
cockroaches. And these are creatures I have a lot of experience with. Shortly after leaving grad school, I was in consumer product development for a company that had the Black Flag label. I am the father of the new and improved Roach Motel. Roaches check in, but they don't check out.
I love that ad.
Yeah. New and improved ant and roach spray with a fresh pine scent. I didn't do that one. My wife did that one, actually. So as you can guess, Ruth and I used to have some very interesting dinner conversations. So if we look at like a face shot of a cockroach, that is a face only a mother can love. And these guys came on the scene shortly after your silverfish and firebrats, about 400 million years ago. Looks like they originated in Northeast Africa, Western Asia, and then they spread out across the planet. And there's about 4,500 species. Most of them are tropical, but we do have a few species up north here that can be significant. So if you look at the architecture of these things, you look at these things head on, and they look like little Indy 500 race cars. They are low to the ground, and that affords them a couple different things. One is they can fit into some very tight spaces. And they like tight spaces as opposed to being up in the open. It's what we call thigmotactic behavior, right?
It is.
And the other thing about them is that they have this giant nerve cord that runs the length of the body, so it can transmit information in a hurry. And what they have found in research is that if you have a cockroach that covers this distance in 1 second, you scale that up to human proportions, that would be like a person doing a 200-mile-an-hour sprint. And that's pretty impressive. I'm only half as fast as that. So they move around quickly. I do get lots of calls on cockroaches, but particularly during the months of May and June. And it's usually because of this creature. This is the Pennsylvania wood roach. And so during May and June, that's mating season. So adult male wood roaches will fly to porch lights, they'll fly to house lights, so they invariably get into houses. So people will send these to me or send pictures and they say, Larry, is this a cockroach? And I'll say, yeah, it sure is. And they have this horrified look. Then I say, it's a wood roach. These things do not take up residence in human structures. So they're nothing really to worry about.
Passing through.
Passing through, basically. If we look at this roach, however, this is a German cockroach. And it's easily distinguished by the wood roach because you see these two dark bands behind the head. And these things do quite well in human structures. And they're pretty much distributed all over the earth. In fact, they've taken advantage of human civilization because out in the wild on their own, they don't do so good. But in human housing, they love it. And what's funny about these guys is that in Germany, they call this guy the Russian cockroach. So the Germans are spreading the love. But they're quite successful. And what makes them a problem indoors is that they're omnivorous scavengers. They feed on anything. So, cellulose and things like that. But if you have food out in the open, or like pet food, or a pizza box on the counter, they're going to take advantage of that. And you might not see them right away because, like the silverfish, they're basically nocturnal. But if you do see German cockroaches out marching around during the day, that is a sign that you have a huge population in your wall voids. So they're not only a nuisance, but they can mechanically move germs around. So this is a problematic animal in hospitals, but also just basically a nuisance pest. But there's also the psychological impact that I have cockroaches in my house, must be a bad sign. Now, we've turned the tables as cultures in certain countries where they're actually growing cockroaches as a high protein food. So in Mexico, a lot in Thailand. Believe it or not, there's over 100 cockroach farms in Thailand cranking out food. So if you look at this This is a female German cockroach. And you see the end of her abdomen, it looks like it's squared off. She's in the process of laying an egg case. And those will hatch out into little tiny nymphs that'll molt and become, you know, adults after about 4 to 6 weeks. And these female cockroaches, in their 9-month lifetime, they can have 10,000 kids. That's why it's so difficult to get rid of these darn things. One of the most widely employed techniques by the pest control industry is to use baits that you apply like a caulking. So if you have a German cockroach problem, don't reach for the Roach Motel. Actually, that's a fraudulent product, but you do what you need to do to pay the rent and pay back those student loans that don't pay themselves. And don't reach for those aerosol sprays along the baseboard. So professionals can apply these baits, and they contain an insecticide and an insect growth regulator. So it's kind of like birth control for roaches. And the products are very, very safe, so you don't have to worry about your pets or your children getting into it and things like that. And you can actually buy this product in box stores like Home Depot, so you don't have to hire a company per se. This is something, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can take care of this yourself. And so that's it for Las Cucarachas for this episode.
So will they survive the nuclear attack?
Roaches have been found to be able to tolerate 100 times more radiation than people. So yeah, they're going to be here long after. So that's it for this segment of Bug Buzz. And Gabby and I look forward to coming back to you again with another couple interesting creatures.
Here's a look at the upcoming meetings for boards, commissions, and committees. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook and Instagram, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.